Second time, and I call the member for Riverina.
Prior to the election, the Prime Minister, Labor members, candidates, senators made a lot of promises, made a lot of pledges, said they were going to do politics better, said they were going to be accountable and transparent. Unfortunately, they haven't been. I'm pleased to be able to rise on this Appropriations Bill number 3 because we weren't permitted, many of us, to speak on Appropriations Bill number 1 because Labor guillotined the debate, gagged the debate, wanted to rush it through. Now, appropriation bills are important because they allow the proper financing of the government's functions. And this particular bill, as well as others, provides the legislative authority for additional funding for government agencies to allow, as it were, the government to do what it needs to do. And that's important. And the government is doing what it needs to do insofar as the various departments, etc., to have the appropriate amount of money for the fiscal year ahead. But the government is not doing what it needs to do when it comes to regional Australia. And there are many examples which are a blight on what the government is rolling out, on what the government is doing. Now, just this week, the government has announced changes made by the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, Senator Murray. What I feel for the Senator, it's a difficult job being an agriculture minister in a Labor government because they don't have the capacity to really have a vision for regional Australia, let alone farming in those areas. And they have so many competing interests in Cabinet, and the regions usually aren't one of them, and farming and agriculture certainly are not part of the mix when the caucus gets together and decides where they're going to spend money, where they're going to have a focus and where they're going to do what's right or what they think is right for and on behalf of Australians. And the biosecurity levy model put in place by this government, if it were not so disgraceful, it would be laughable. In no other country would farmers of that country be expected to pay the levies, the biosecurity of the imported foods, the imported products from another nation. I know, they would not. But in this country, they are. And our hard-working farmers, already under siege because of the policies of those opposite, are being asked to pay for a biosecurity protection levy for the goods that are coming in from their competitors, the imported products from other countries which are going to sit alongside our products, our farmers' products, on the same supermarket shelves in Australian cities and towns. How ridiculous, how nonsensical, how embarrassing. I am aghast at this. Now, Minister Watt has announced that there will be a 30% reduction of this proposed biosecurity protection level, but it's already too high. The levy shouldn't be there at all. And yet farmers are expected to say, oh, hallelujah, let the sun shine in because there's been a 30% reduction in what we were going to have to pay. We should be so lucky. Well, the levy should be there at all. There should be no levy. Why should Australian farmers pay for the biosecurity for their competitors? I mean, I'd love to know the answer to that question. I'd love to know why our farmers, who are doing it so tough, who propped up this country largely with their friends in mining through COVID, they still put food on our tables. They still put food on ships and in the bellies of planes to go overseas to help our balance of payments. Our farmers feed our nation and many others besides. And yet, what do they cop from the Labor government? they cop kicks in the guts all the time, like these biosecurity charges. And don't just take my word for it. The Chief Executive Officer of Grain Producers Australia, Colin Bettles, I know him well, said, "Our view is that we spend enough on levies already and that the government should spend what they have better. Couldn't have said it better myself." He continued, "We already pay 1.02% of our bottom line in compulsory levies that go to research and development and biosecurity and global market access. And that's good, because we need R&D. We need to improve what we're doing. And I admire the work being done at Charles Sturt University at Wagga Wagga, particularly in the space of chickpeas and other products. They've got a world-class equine laboratory there where they're doing research not just into horses but into veterinary science, and the work that they're doing for agriculture and through the Drought Hub and everything else is second to none. And the Labor members opposite should know that it's actually part of that research and development is at the Eddie Graham Centre, named after a former Labor State Agriculture Minister. A good man, a very, very good man. But that was back in the 50s when Labor actually cared about the regions. They've long stopped caring about the regions and certainly about farming. But Mr Bettles was quite right when he added, "It's ridiculous for the government to call us the only beneficiaries of biosecurity. It's fundamentally flawed logic. Enough is enough." But, you know, people like Mr Bettles would be expected to now bow and scrape at the feet of the Labor cabinet because they've reduced the biosecurity levy. He should be so thankful that they have reduced what is an unnecessary charge. It just defies logic. And there was another very, very interesting quote from Terry O'Leary. Now, he raises wheat and watermelons in the Queensland town of Chinchilla in the Western Downs of that fine state in the seat of Maranoa. He said, "I think it's disgusting the way they're treating us as a cash cow." And this is a fascinating quote. "You wouldn't go to the state of origin and expect players to pay for security at the front gate out of their own pocket. So why should farmers?" Good point. Very, very good point. When you look at horticulture, 32% of the industry is considering leaving. 32%. It's almost a third. Now that's not just because of the biosecurity levies, that's also because of the changes to the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, where farmers are expected to pay for workers a minimum 30 hours a week, every week, even during seasonal conditions or unseasonable conditions when there possibly might be no work. Now, all farmers know that you should be paid a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. And you know, those farmers or those people who use foreign labour, who do not do that and who exploit the systems, should be reported, should be charged and have the full force of authorities brought against them. But in the main, in the absolute extreme main, our farmers rely on Pacific workers, do the right thing by Pacific workers, pay Pacific workers the right amount, and yet under the union-conspired laws put in by those opposite, they're now going to get whacked again. So they're going to get whacked for having their competitors' products. They're going to be charged for the biosecurity of their overseas competitors. They're going to get whacked and have to pay workers to sit around and do nothing when there's no work to be done under the new union-conspired, union-inspired, union-led rules that are taking over Palm. And then we have Mr O'Leary saying it is ridiculous Labor is putting a tax on an industry that is shrinking and this will affect our food security. Now, the members here for O'Connor and Nichols, and Casey too, know how important food security is, but particularly my regional colleagues. And the member for O'Connor is very upset about how his sheep farmers are being treated with the live export nonsense that is going on through this parliament and through this nation. No other country in the world has an export supply chain assurance scheme in place where animal welfare is placed at number one, and it should be. But we are now facing the prospect that we will just outsource animal welfare to other countries who couldn't give two hoots about sheep, cattle, anything else that they are exporting live to any other country, but we do, and our farmers do, and they take exception to the fact that they get accused by the members for Clark and many others besides who say that they don't put animal welfare as their number one priority. But I'll tell you what they also put as their number one as a priority, and that's making a quid. Because farmers shouldn't have to do something for nothing. Farmers shouldn't have to be hit all the time by charges and levies, whether it's biosecurity, to be told that they aren't animal welfare conscious. I mean, this is just nonsense. It's hard enough to farm in this nation now without the Labor government putting on all these imposts, all these impositions. And when they do, as they probably will, ban all animal exports, those animal export trades and routes will be taken up by countries who don't care at all about animal welfare. Suffer the poor sheep, as they will. And that is what will happen. But, you know, they'll go all to their little NIMBY little meetings and they'll have their tofu and they'll sit around and drink their chamomile tea and they'll say, aren't we good? We stopped the sheep trade. Aren't we good? But they won't even care about the sheep that will be on there. They won't be having their pants measured. They won't be having their airflow on their ships like we do. And when they die, they'll just get thrown overboard. It's just a disgrace. I mean, we outsource so much in this country these days to countries who just don't care. I mean, it is a nonsense. And then, of course, as the member for Nichols will rightly say, we've got the changes to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. I mean, my goodness. We, in the Nationals and regional Liberals too, fought so hard against the draft of the Basin Plan back in 2010. I mean, here we were with Labor wanting just about every available drop of water sent out of the mouth of the Murray. The mouth of the Murray, which wasn't even put on the early maps of Australia because it was banked up by sand, but never let the historical facts get in the way of a good environmental story. The Murray, which many times before man-made interventions such as weirs and locks and dams, dried up often. It did. I mean, people had picnics in the dry creek beds and the river beds of our various streams, ephemeral streams. Yet what does Labor want to do? They want to take the water away. They want to buy it out of our communities. And what happens when a farmer in stress and in distress sells their water? Well, the price of water goes through the roof because the government has just intervened, and that farmer takes their money and they lose the community. And it leaves the community literally high and dry. And it's not just the farming community that suffers, it's the hairdresser, it's the motor mechanic, it's the school.
Order. Division has been called in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The